I love the fact that there's so much diversity in the profession, because to me, what that means is that we're able to help people in so many diverse ways. I mean, to me, that represents us being able to reach deeper and reach wider in terms of helping people.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business, so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo, and with me today I have a special guest, Dr. Chad Woolner. Dr. Chad, so good to be with you here today.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. Likewise.
We are in an amazing and unprecedented time in our history. And Dr. Chad, I know that for you, as I've followed you over the years, you have always been someone who has struck me as kind of on the front edge, the cutting edge of things, especially coming from a chiropractic background. You were one of the first people I saw when it came to marketing to use digital marketing, specifically using platforms like webinars to reach your community. And I'll be honest, when I first started learning about webinars and things like this, it was like foreign to me and I had no idea. And we're going to dig into that today for all of you, Dr. Chad, in our space of chiropractic and probably even beyond this space, has really become one of the voices and the go-to resources for chiropractors and even other small business owners who want to learn about how to use webinars as one strategy, one tool to reach your audience. We're going to be digging into that today. But before we get into that, I want to let our wonderful audience, Dr. Chad, get to know you. And you said you knew about our podcast. I'm so glad that you know about the Remarkable CEO Podcast. And we have an amazing set of listeners who are tuning in today to this episode. And I want them to know about you, a little bit about you before we dig into the content for today. So Dr. Chad, why don't you fill in our amazing listeners and tell them a little bit about you, who you are, where you come from, and what's something that you're super passionate about?
Sure, absolutely. I'll do my best to bring you guys up to speed. And first off, obviously, thanks for having me. I'm honored to be here. I know, obviously, you guys work with a lot of great chiropractors and other experts. And so just honored to be lumped in that same group. So I'm a chiropractor. I've been practicing for over a decade. I was one of the first probably 10 or 20 people to use ClickFunnels. Russell Brunson's a close friend of mine. And I've used funnels for a wide range of different things to help grow my practice. But one of the things that I got into early on, in fact, I would say that the first funnel I ever did before like using them in my practice was a webinar funnel. And long story short with that is that my wife has dealt with a lot of different chronic health issues over the years. I did some functional medicine training and figured out how to help her. But then also I was like extrapolated like, hey, look, there are other people who are struggling with these issues too. So I created a webinar and I used a funnel for it and experienced some success. But the drawback, and I know this is going to sound probably perhaps a bit awful, but I'm just being honest and I'm just going to be real, is that I realized that I didn't want to work with a lot of chronic health issue patients because my passion was more tied up in helping my wife than it was in actually the functional medicine realm, if that makes sense. And again, for docs who do that, if that's your thing, please don't let this like discourage anybody from doing that. I just realized for me, that wasn't something that I was like super passionate about and excited about. And I realized like, even though there was good money to be made there, I just knew that whatever it was I was going to do had to be something that I love doing regardless of money that was there, if that makes sense. And that's one of my first rules that I teach docs when they're looking at using a strategy like webinars. And I think this goes without saying for any business venture that you're going to be involved with is, I've always had a saying, profit follows passion, and the problem is we have this tendency of flip-flopping those two and hoping and thinking and believing that passion will follow profit, but it rarely does, and so just understand, that you got to hone in. And I learned that firsthand. And so anyways, I learned the skill set though of webinars, and it's evolved over the years into a lot of different things. And it's been a very valuable skill set that has allowed me to do a lot of really neat things. And obviously it's helped me to help a lot of other chiropractors and healthcare professionals learn it as well. So so we have an integrated clinic here in Meridian, Idaho, and I love what I do. I love being a part of that practice. I love my team and love our patients. And I think that's a good snapshot already.
I love it. And I think it's super powerful, your story, because it strikes me in a way where I think many of the doctors who maybe are like me and like you, I have a passion for educating my patients. I've always had a passion for educating them. But I think what's happened because of the coronavirus situation is that many of us had to look for new ways to be able to reach out to our people. And so as to extrapolate, what you just said, they may not listen to this and say, oh, I want to do webinars because that's my passion. But their passion is reaching people and helping people transform their health. And so it's a tool to use. And as CEOs, we talk about leverage and how important it is for us to leverage technology and some of the platforms that we now have to be able to reach the people. So I think your story actually speaks directly into the situation, which is we are all faced right now with having to pivot, to adapt. How are we going to be doing these workshops for the businesses in our towns where we used to go out and we used to do these corporate lunch and learns, we used to do these health talks? How are we going to do those? How are we going to do if we did dinner with the doctor? How are we going to do that now? How are we going to do our in-office workshops if we do in-office workshops? Well, a lot of that has had to be adapted to going into a virtual platform and virtual realm, which again, some of the docs that are listening may not be their passion. Like I personally love being toe to toe with my audience. I absolutely do. I love the face-to-face interactions, but I've had to adapt to doing virtual meetings and virtual business, in the space that I work in the coaching consulting industry. When I'm in the clinical setting, it's toe to toe. It's you're in the brick and mortar, but now the docs are adapting. They're having to adapt to this new way of engaging with the audience, especially as now we're moving into what we've been laying out, the 3-stage Phoenix plan. Stage 1 was stabilization, stage 2, reactivation, and then stage 3, mobilization. And Chad, this falls perfectly into our conversation about mobilization, which is how are we going to be getting back out into our communities? How are we going to let our communities know what we're doing? And one of the things we've been teaching our clients about is to leverage workshops. And we gave them one workshop called the Bulletproof Your Immune System Workshop, because this is relevant content right now. This is the content that people in your community are desperate to hear. And they need to hear your voice. There's all sorts of information. There's all sorts of voices, but it's your the one being heard. Are people looking to you for guidance and for direction? And we know that they should be. And so how will they consume that content? And this is one way and one strategy that can absolutely be deployed right now to meet your people exactly where they are. Now, Chad, I'll be honest, my only experience with webinars is B2B. And if you don't know what that means, if you're listening to this, it means business to business. I've only done webinars speaking to other business owners, other entrepreneurs who are the people that I work with. The people that hire me own businesses. They're entrepreneurs. They're chiropractic business owners, right? So when I've done webinars, I've done them in the context of I'm speaking to an audience who is that person, right? So it's a business owner, it's decision makers. They're looking at ways that they need to, support themselves and have, grow their business. And so they would, consult with somebody like me to be able to help them do that, right? What we're talking about here today is how does a business owner, like a doctor, a chiropractor, let's say specifically, use this type of a platform like webinars to effectively reach their community and to grow their business, right? That's the key. It's not just getting information out there. It's actually getting information out there through this platform to actually create a return on that investment of that time, energy, focus, and money, the 4 limited resources that we all have. How do you generate a return on that? So Chad, what I want to do today is I want to kind of pick your brain. You've been doing this for many, many years, and you run in circles with some pretty brilliant people as well. So I know you've learned a lot over the years, and you've taught a lot of chiropractors, including our chiropractors who went through our attraction immersion during the months of April and May that we did in the US and Australia. So I'm so thankful to have you as part of our podcast right now.
Yeah.
So Chad, just starting at a high level, let's talk about why. Let's start with the why. We always talk about the heart, right? And so your story went back to your heart. Your heart started, hey, my wife was struggling with these health issues. I was able to help her. I thought there's other people struggling with these health issues. How can I help them? And so you put it out there, but you realize it wasn't necessarily your passion to help them, but you've actually developed a passion for helping chiropractors use the platform of ClickFunnels and webinars to reach their people. Can you talk a little bit about the why behind it for you? And then why this would be something that for a doctor would be super valuable for them, not only now, but even beyond this, like for the years ahead, why this can be a really valuable strategy and resource for them to implement for growing their business.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I would have to say for me, I've done now, oh golly, literally I've probably done over 200 at least webinars, like live webinars, for a variety of different things, ChiroFunnel Secrets being one of my biggest. But I start off just about every webinar, at least for chiropractors when I do that, letting them know kind of why I do what I do. And I tell a story of a good friend of mine, Dr. Matt Ogle, and how he was struggling in practice and how me teaching him how to use funnels in his practice was a major turning point for him in his practice, and how that made me feel seeing that. And primarily it made me feel good because I acutely am aware of the struggle that docs face. I'm like that cliche story of struggling chiropractor who finally was able to figure things out. And so I'm really aware of the struggle and the pain of not just chiropractors, but entrepreneurship in general, the challenge and the roller coaster that often is, and especially now with things being the way they are. So I want docs to know, as perhaps generic as it might sound or cliche as it might sound, I really am aware and care about that struggle that docs go through. And so my heart is really there with docs in the trenches, as they say. I would say that's the first thing. The second thing that I would say kind of along those same lines is one thing about the profession that used to just bug the crap out of me, but has since been something I actually love, which is kind of weird, was I used to hate the fact that there was so much diversity in the profession. Like, why can't there just be like a standard of care that's there? I went to school at University of Western States. And so obviously that being a very, medically based, evidence-based, whatever you want to call it, type school, Western medicine philosophy. And I got out of school really with this kind of mindset and mentality that, there needs to be like the medical profession, this standard of care that everybody follows. And yet you find in chiropractic, there is such a vast diversity in terms of what different chiropractors will do. And that used to bug me. I used to hate it. And then I started to see it in a completely different light. And I can't honestly tell you when it was that it shifted, but I think it was a slow and subtle shift that took place. But eventually it got to this point where I realized I love the fact that there is so much diversity in the profession, because to me, what that means is that we're able to help people in so many diverse ways. I mean, to me, that represents us being able to reach deeper and reach wider in terms of helping people. And so for me, my why, getting back to that original question, why am I passionate about this, is for me, I have always believed, and I know this is going to sound, I always say this, it's going to sound a little corny, a little cheesy maybe, but I have always believed that there are people out there who are struggling that can only be helped by a specific someone, a chiropractor. You know what I mean? You have been blessed with, you have been endowed with, whatever you've trained for, whatever you want to call it. And you've been given a very special, very specific set of skills and tools and resources that were meant to help very specific individuals that only you can help. And so for me, it's always been this whole idea that what a shame it would be if the only reason that you weren't able to help those people, that you weren't able to get to them, was because you weren't able to reach them with your message. And that means marketing, right? Whatever that channel might be. And it just so happens we're talking about webinars. And so for me, the why is, look, if we can marry together this channel of amplification to mean that this is going to allow you to connect with the people you were meant to connect with that you otherwise may not have connected with, and that you have this special set of skills that were meant to reach those people that only you could reach and teach and help and serve, then for me, like that's all the why I need to be excited about it. Because to me, to be able to help facilitate in my small way those connections, to be able to assist in that process, it's just very exciting to me to see that, and very, very rewarding. So that's my why.
We'll be back right after this. Now more than ever, you must be on your A game. Doc, as we move out of the dark ages of this corona catastrophe, let's ready ourselves to move into the mobilization stage and start marketing again. Are you and your team ready to be seeing a surge and influx of new patient prospects? If you're like most chiropractic practices, you may be a little out of shape when it comes to your day 1, day 2, day 3 process and procedure. We've all been focused on other things. So let us help you get back in shape so that you can bring your A game to your new patients and don't blow it for them. Remember, you can only help the ones you convert. We're going to make this easy for you and your team. The Remarkable Conversion Immersion is an intensive 2-day training on our proven new patient conversion process, and we're hosting it as a virtual live streaming event June 12th and 13th. During this virtual live training event, we will show you exactly what to do and how to do it. Discover the proven system that thousands of successful chiropractic teams have been using all around the world for years, and it's working now, today, better than ever. This is a live streaming training event, so you can train from the comfort of your home, or even better, get your team together and train from your office. No flights, hotels, or expensive meals. All the awesome TRP coaches and TRP tribe, and the best new patient conversion training available in chiropractic. You stay home with your family and sleep in your own bed. Since the COVID-19 restrictions, we have been delivering our TRP immersions as live streaming virtual events, and the feedback has been off the charts. And when you register now, you get 66% off tickets for yourself and your team while seats last. The seminar is regularly $29.97 when you attend a live venue. It's now available for only $9.97 because it will be streaming, a live event streaming. The 2020 Remarkable Conversion Immersion, June 12th and 13th. Get your tickets now. Go to theremarkablepractice.com/conversion-immersion. Or simply go to theremarkablepractice.com and click on events and go to the Conversion Immersion in June. Get 66% off for you and your team while tickets last. Register now for this incredible event. You can have the practice and lifestyle you dream of. Let us help you get your team on board with a simple, proven system that works. Don't try to figure this out alone. Join this group of successful chiropractors who are eager to help you in an ego-free environment and get the tools you need to accelerate your practice this year. And now, back to our conversation. Beautiful. You know, what I'm going back to as you're talking about this is this concept of audience of one, right? Like, who's the one person? And I think that's always the heart behind, you know, the mission has to be that if you were to do it just for even one person, would it be worth it? Right?
Right.
If you were to host this webinar for just one person, would it be worth it? If you were to become a chiropractor and one person's life was dramatically changed and that person's life forever changing then their whole family history change. Would it be worth it?
Right.
And, when we can answer yes to that, we know that we're on the right track as far as calling, as far as purpose, right? You talk about purpose, and it's absolutely critical. So I love that, that's at the heart of why you found this to be valuable. But you also said something really powerful, which is that this is a marketing conversation. Today's podcast is absolutely dedicated to a marketing strategy, which is called leveraging funnels and webinars, right? There's no question about it. That's what we're talking about, okay? And it works. And I want to hear a little bit about, some of the results that obviously you've gotten, and you've been really transparent with us whenever you're sharing about your numbers and your results. Like, listen, here's the deal. Here's what we do. Here's what's happening. But here's what I want to be the takeaway for the doctors who are listening on the other side, because I have a personal, I feel like, responsibility to those people, the listeners who tune into us every single week, to let you know, listeners, that this is going to be the way that one thing we're going to be embracing and need to embrace moving forward, I believe, is to embrace these types of strategies, marketing strategies, that we should be position ourselves in the marketplace to be able to reach people. Like you said, the people that we might never reach, but if we did a webinar, you would reach them. But if you just did what you always have done, you would not reach them. And that to me is worth it, right? And when it comes to scalability, Doc, because that's something we've talked about in our program with becoming a CEO, we talk about the difference between being an owner-operator and becoming a CEO. Is number one, you have to have an identity shift. And identity is inside out, right? As chiropractors, it's above, down, inside out, right? It starts above, down, inside out. It's an identity shift that one has to go through from the mindset and the identity of an owner-operator. Where we like to talk about, we use brute force, and that'll get you so far. And in chiropractic, that's historically, as far as we get. To then shifting to the other side, which is an identity shift that says I'm going to become a CEO, where now it's about leverage. And leverage means I'm going to leverage technology. I'm going to leverage systems. I'm going to leverage team, right? I'm going to leverage these things, training. There's all sorts of things we leverage, right? To be able to create a business, right? Turn that job into a business. And businesses are categorized by three very specific things. Number one, they're scalable. Scalable means that we can give more, we can love more, serve more, make a bigger impact, make a bigger income. But it doesn't all have to depend on you. And we know what it feels like when everything depends on us. So that's scalability. Right. Durability is the characteristic number two. Durability is we're able to give, love, serve more, make a bigger impact, and a bigger income, even in our absence. And I know that's even possible with webinars. And the third category is transferability. Because here's the thing, Doc. One day you will exit. One day you will exit. It may not be in the near future, but one day you will. And for most, it's going to come, and it'll come quicker than you think. And then all of a sudden, we're not really prepared for that. And so part of becoming a CEO is you're preparing for the transferability, to make it a saleable asset where you're able to capture value from all of the work that you've built, but also the person on the other side is also receiving an asset, not a liability, which means you set it up as a win-win for you and for them. And that's one of the elements of becoming a CEO. And so when I think about those things, Doc, and I think about specifically what you're teaching and what you're guiding chiropractors in doing, how do you see this? How do you see webinars fitting into a scalable, durable, transferable business model? When you think about specifically this strategy, this way to market and reach your community, what comes to your mind when you think about that?
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because for me, I feel like the conversation that has happened amidst all of this has been a very myopic view of what webinars are and what they'll do for your practice. And I think most are thinking about it in terms of creating a virtual practice, right? That you use webinars to reach the globe, a global audience, to create some sort of an online platform program or sell supplements, whatever it is that you're, you know what I mean? And that's the thing. And there's definitely a conversation there for sure. I'm not going to shy away from that and say that that doesn't exist and that you can't do that and that you can't have that as part of your strategy. But the problem I feel like is for a lot of docs, I feel like that's a very overwhelming concept, rightfully so, at least those who are being thoughtful about it, because all of a sudden, despite what some, not all, but what some marketers are doing to kind of pitch their approach or program or whatnot, is that that's a whole separate business. And if you're going to do that, which I'm not, again, I hope this isn't like me sounding like a Debbie Downer and discouraging docs from going that route. But if you're going to go that route, go with it eyes wide open and know that that is a separate and distinct business that you have just ventured into. And it's not this quick flip of the switch overnight, like, yay, I've got an online business and it's easy. It's like, no, you've got this whole thing now you got to manage. And it's a different beast with its own different set of challenges and obstacles. And so understand that's one way that this fits in. But one other way, or a couple other ways I should say, is when you integrate the webinar model into your existing business, into your existing practice, it can be a tool that you can use for growth within the existing practice, or something that can be synergistic to that, can help the overall mission and purpose. So let me give some examples so that docs, I'm being a little bit abstract here. Okay. So, let's talk about how you might use a webinar to really enhance the practice. So obviously the first thing that we could say, the simplest thing you could do, is you could use webinars as a tool or a vehicle for getting new patients in your door physically that you will see. As much as some of the various people championing the current narrative with COVID-19 would have you believe, trust me, we will get back to seeing patients like normal. It will be business as usual. It's not going to be a new normal. It'll be just normal. You'll be able to see patients. And so the idea of using webinars as a tool for getting new patients through the door is a very practical and very effective tool that you can use, especially in today's day and age, given the constraints and circumstances. But even moving forward, it's still a great way to reach people because of the convenience, because of the fact that as a result of all of this, I think people are going to be more adept or more savvy to knowing how to use Zoom themselves as a participant. And so it's going to make this platform that much more familiar to people. And anytime you have a platform that becomes more familiar to people, obviously opportunity goes up, So I would say that's the first thing that docs could recognize and understand, is you can use webinars as a way of just getting new patients through the door. Number two, you could use it as a way of selling a product, program, or service that works in tandem with or in conjunction with your practice. So a perfect example of something we've done and are doing is we have a weight loss program that works in tandem with the care we're already providing with our patients. And we do that. We sell that via, among other channels, we use a webinar to do that. And so if you've got an ancillary product, program, or service that ties into your practice that may not necessarily be the physical adjustments that you're doing or whatever, but it's something that enhances or works in conjunction with, that's another way that you can use a webinar as well to do that. And then I would say the other way you could do it, like I previously mentioned, is you could create a webinar to where, let's say you had a product, program, or service that you wanted to actually promote globally rather than just locally. Then that's a great way to use webinars as well. But understanding that with that comes a new set of opportunities and challenges, in the sense that you're looking at creating an online business and figuring out how to play that delicate balance or act of juggling, to a certain extent, how to run that successfully and grow that and scale that. Well, at the same token, making sure that you're not neglecting the brick and mortar practice as well. So I know it's still kind of a mile up, but at least hopefully maybe that gives docs a good idea in terms of how to wrap their heads around the way I see webinars and how you would use that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's beautiful. I think your three scenarios, I love them, and I'd like to unpack the first two, or at least start to dig in a little bit. The last one,
Yeah.
like you said, opening and starting a virtual business, that's a conversation for a different day.
Right.
You're familiar with that. I'm familiar with that. It's a whole nother thing. And as CEOs, we do need to be able to have that conversation. If you're at that place where that's the next step for you, then let's have that conversation. Unfortunately, Doc, if you're going to do that because you're failing in the current business you're in, that might not necessarily be the right reason, because unfortunately the same problems are going to face you there, and they actually could be even more complicated. So with that being said, let's not go to number 3, even though that's an absolutely awesome conversation to have. Okay, let's take a quick break and talk about Chiro Matchmakers.
Chiro Matchmakers will help you find the right person for the job. If you're looking to hire the ideal chiropractic assistant, Chiro Matchmakers will help you find the specific person missing from your team so that you can get back to using your talents to serve more people. Or if you're looking to hire the ideal associate doctor, CMM can help. Chiro Matchmakers helps chiropractors like you find the ideal associate doctor to unlock your practice potential and get you the freedom that you desire. To learn more, go to chiromatchmakers.com.
And now let's jump right back into our conversation. Let's go with the first one, the first use of the webinar. I love that, how you use it to enhance your current practice, right? So can we dig into that a little bit and talk about some ways that right now maybe you or clients who you've worked with are actually using webinar pre-COVID, right? And will be continuing to do it post, to actually enhance and grow their practice by driving new people. And can we just talk a little bit about what does that look like for, a CEO who's listening to this, for them to bring this strategy, this approach to their practice now?
Yeah, no, that's a great segue, great point. I would say, docs, let's not overcomplicate it. If docs have ever done a dinner talk, you're virtually talking the same structure, framework, format as a dinner talk. Really, the objectives are going to be identical. Look, what's the goal of a dinner talk number 1? Well, the goal of a dinner talk number 1 is to get butts in the seats, right? That's your first objective. If no one shows up, it really doesn't matter how great your talk is, how great your close is. If no one's there, it's all for nothing, right? So getting people to show up is your first objective. Your second objective is really helping to persuasively educate your audience and at the end of that, close them, And then the third is getting those people who were there to actually show up for an appointment in the clinic, right? So, and maybe we could break those down into but just for the sake of simplicity, really 3 key objectives here with a dinner talk are going to be virtually identical transposed over to a webinar. We still want people to show up virtually, meaning they actually take time out of their schedule to show up live on the webinar. And there are some distinct advantages over a webinar, advantages and disadvantages, pros and cons, right? But some distinct advantages to a webinar in that with a dinner talk, if people don't show up to the dinner talk, you're not going to mail them leftovers from the dinner and hope that they'll read your letter. You know what I mean? Like, here are some leftovers and here's a letter that gives you a bullet point summary of everything we went over at the dinner, right? That's not a terribly practical strategy, right? Whereas with a webinar, a virtual webinar, you can send out replay links. So if they didn't show up live, there's still the opportunity to kind of reclaim potential or mitigate potential loss. We'll just say it that way, right? And the reality of it is, docs, just so you understand, and I'm sure most docs are realistic enough these days to understand that, just like with a dinner talk, you're not going to get a 100% show up rate, right? And so with a webinar, same idea. You're not going to get a 100% show up rate. So in terms of that first, and if it's cool, Pete, I'm just going to riff in terms of like talking about how to best practices for trying to achieve these goals. Goal 1, goal 2, goal 3, right? And I'll do it kind of quick. Goal number 1, getting people to show up. The strategy is not what docs think it is. In fact, I would say it's the exact opposite of what docs think it is. The secret to getting people to show up. Most of the time, I think docs assume that the secret to getting people to show up to a webinar is to convey as much information as possible to razzle dazzle them and get them excited. If I just show them the data and the research and the and all this stuff, and the problem is that does two things. Number one, it's overwhelming to the prospect. It's too much information for them, number one. And number two, when you start filling in the gaps, even giving them, docs wouldn't think it's too much, right? But the problem is the minute that people are able to jump to conclusions or piece things together in terms of what they assume you are going to be sharing or teaching or doing on the webinar, the minute people assume something is the minute you dramatically decrease the likelihood of them showing up live. There are kind of two key emotional hot buttons that you want to be triggering when people go to your funnel to register for the webinar, and that is curiosity and or intrigue, right? And so I did a consult for a doc that I was helping. He was doing a webinar recently, and I went through and I looked at his funnel, and he was getting decent response from his ads. His click-through rate on his Facebook ads was doing good, but I asked him to tell me what his funnel conversion was. And I said, and I asked him, what were you spending per registration? And he said he was spending about $15 to $20 per registration for his webinar. And I was like, that's a little too high. At first that might be okay. And depending upon what your metrics are and everything. But I asked him, what's your conversion rate on your funnel? And I said, I'm going to guess it's less than 20%. I said, I can almost guarantee you it's going to be way less than 20%. He's like, yeah, he said it's about 13, 14%. And I said, yeah. And I said, the reason why, I said, I promise you, the reason why is you're saying too much in terms of what you're going to be teaching. And therefore what happens is people, and I mean, for docs to understand this, just think about it yourself. Whenever you go to if you've ever been to a webinar landing page or any funnel for that matter, you scan through it and immediately what we want to do is we want the information now. And so what we'll do is we'll jump to conclusions. Oh, okay. I see that he's talking about this. I know what he's talking about. He's going to probably be sharing this, or this. You know what I mean? And so we fill in the gaps. We jump to conclusions. Okay, I don't need to attend because I already know what he's going to be talking about. And the problem there is, as we can assume, number one, it kills conversions, but number two, people aren't getting the full story, right? I guarantee you and if docs want to know what I mean by this, we created a funnel framework for those who attended the immersion based on that bulletproof your immune system talk. And that's exactly the way we framed it was, and I'm curious if you've heard, Pete, my guess is it's converting at least 25, 30%, if not higher. My guess is, no, actually, I know from firsthand experience, Dr. Osborne in your group, what's his first name? Down in California, right? Or
TJ.
What's that?
Yeah, Dr.
TJ. TJ. Yeah, he told me that funnel when he promoted it internally. Now, internally is a warm market, which again, you should promote it internally, but he said it was converting at, I think 70 or 80% when he promoted it, which was like, that was amazing to me. Anyways, it was just super cool to hear that. I was like, it's working, you know? And so anyways, but curiosity is what drives that, right? You want to create intrigue. And so you don't want to reveal everything right up front. And there's different ways that you can do that, but we typically will lay it out in terms of, in general, the framework we'll use is problem, discovery, solution, right? The problem with the way most people, the status quo, right? What you're going to learn on this webinar is problem. The reason why most people are still getting sick, even though they right? That discovery. The simple discovery we found that helps with XYZ, and then solution. Our simple 3-step or 4-step process or however many step process that we use to help patients get XYZ result, right? That's a simple framework that you can use. And you want to make sure that you really keep things kind of tight-lipped because you want it to create questions. You don't want it to create answers for people. So if it creates questions, that's going to drive curiosity and intrigue. That's going to increase conversion rates. So that's one thing. I mean, there's obviously we could talk for hours, but in general, that's what's going to drive butts in the seats is curiosity, okay, and intrigue, right? So then getting them to actually be persuaded, obviously, I have my opinions and feelings on that, but for the sake of time, follow what Dr. Franson and Dr. Camiolo and Roberto Monaco teach in terms of persuasion. I guarantee you guys have probably talked about that and probably have had Roberto Monaco. So just, don't listen to me. Listen to Roberto Monaco. Listen to those guys. They'll teach you how to persuade people. Okay. So there we go. That secret's out of the way. Done. We're good. Secret number 3, how to get them to show up in your clinic: urgency and scarcity, right? And when I mean urgency and scarcity, I don't mean fake urgency and fake scarcity. You don't need to overcomplicate this. And the other thing that I would say about this is you can and should, in my humble opinion, be ridiculously transparent about why you're using urgency and scarcity. Let people know they're cool with it, right? So if you say, look, tonight, this offer that I'm making is just good for today, only for people who make an appointment. And let me tell you why I'm doing that. Because we realize that for most of us, myself included, we tend to put things off. We tend to put things on the back burner. And unfortunately for us, we put our health on the back burner. And so we say, okay, I'll get to that tomorrow. And tomorrow becomes next week. And then next week becomes next month. And before you know it, we're months down the road, if not years down the road, and you still haven't taken action. And so the reason we do this special offer, and we only offer it for people who make this appointment right now, is because we want people to take action. Just be brutally transparent about it in terms of your urgency and scarcity. That will dramatically drive up the likelihood of people showing up to their appointments in terms of that offer. So I know that's like a ton spit out all at once, but I wanted to really try and deliver as much value as possible in that. So hopefully that's valuable.
You brought a ton of value, and I think that their minds are full right now, and I think that you left everybody with some curiosity and some intrigue, and so you definitely got me at that point. So before we wrap up this podcast episode, Dr. Chad, if docs are listening, they're like, you know what, this is something I need to explore, I need to learn more about. I know that there's a place where they can go. You had talked about there's a video that they can watch to learn more. There's a website that you have. Can you share with us that one more time? And if there's any links that we want to add, we can add it to the podcast as well. But Please let us know where they can learn more about this.
Yeah. So ChiroFunnel Secrets University is my training platform. I created it several years ago, and it has grown immensely. And if docs want to kind of see a training that I did where I talk about kind of 3 core funnels, and in there, it's grown way beyond just 3 funnels. In fact, there is a whole webinar, an extensive webinar training. In fact, it's funny because I call it the ChiroFunnel CEO, but it stands for creating your empire online is what I call it. Right. So different CEO than you guys, but yeah, they can watch it's an hour and a half long training. If they go to chirofunnelsecrets.com/go. I let docs know, again, in the name of transparency, it is a sales page. So it's going to pitch them on ChiroFunnel Secrets University. But if they do watch the whole video, they'll get a really clear idea, a very solid foundation of kind of how you use funnels in practice. And they'll see a very similar concept, or a framework, I should say. And it's the same framework we use for webinars. Literally, it's this same kind of general framework for funnels, but that'll really give them I think a very much more clear picture of how we use funnels in our practice and how they can maybe begin to see how they could apply funnels and or webinars into their practice.
Awesome, Doc. Well, I'll have to pick this up and continue the conversation on another episode and dive into number 2, which was selling products and services like you do with the weight loss. I think that would be of great interest to our audience. And so thank you so much for taking time to meet with me and to be a part of our Remarkable CEO podcast. And again, for more information, go to chirofunnelsecrets.com/go to see that training that Dr. Chad talked about. You can get access to that hour plus long training and learn a lot more. And then, of course, Dr. Chad, they can also find you on the web as well if you want to reach directly out to Chad. Thank you so much, Doc, for joining me and being a part of the Remarkable CEO podcast. Again, we say that, CEOs are people that are always thinking strategically ahead and thinking about 2 things. Number 1 is what's important right now and what's important next. And I truly believe that these webinars and these funnels and these webinars, these things are important right now, but I also believe that it's important next for setting our businesses and our practices up for greater success in the future. So thank you, Doc, for being a part of helping our CEOs become even more remarkable CEOs, and specifically helping us save more lives. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, and I look forward to joining you again on our next episode. Take care.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.